What if the story you've been telling yourself about your mental health is wrong? What if it's not unresolved trauma? What if you've spent years trying to heal something that was never the root cause? On #therapy TikTok, trauma explains everything. Your ADHD, trauma. Your anxiety, trauma. Your addiction, trauma. Your love of the San Francisco 49ers, trauma. It's a powerful story. It's comforting. Because if it's trauma, you can heal it. But if it's not, well, who knows? When trauma becomes the explanation for everything, we stop looking for what's actually wrong. And that's where people get stuck. By the end of this video, you'll know how to tell whether trauma is actually driving your symptoms or whether something else has been hiding in plain sight. And who am I to bring data to a debate built on vibes? My name is Dr. Sulman Aziz Mirza, triple board certified in adult psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, and addiction medicine. And I've noticed that good science rarely blocks questions. Let's start with what trauma actually is. Not the event itself, what happens in your body after. Trauma isn't just a bad memory. It's an alarm system that didn't get the signal that the danger is over. Your brain has two key players here: the amygdala, your threat detector, and the hippocampus, your memory organizer. Think of the amygdala like a nightclub bouncer. Its job is to scan for danger. After trauma, that scan becomes constant. It starts assuming threat instead of evaluating it. Meanwhile, the hippocampus, the librarian, struggles to file the experience properly. Instead of being stored as something difficult that happened years ago, the memory stays present. That's why trauma doesn't just feel remembered, it feels re-experienced. When that alarm stays on, your stress system, the HPA axis, releases cortisol. In short bursts, cortisol is useful. It sharpens focus, increases energy, helps you respond. But when it stays elevated for years or months, it narrows your window of tolerance. Everyday stress feels overwhelming. You might become hypervigilant, scanning every room, analyzing every shift in tone. Or you might feel numb, disconnected, emotionally flat. Neither response means that you are broken. They mean your nervous system has adapted to survive. And here's where the confusion actually begins. Chronic stress also interferes with focus, with memory, with emotional regulation, which means trauma can look like ADHD, like anxiety, like depression. Same symptoms, different mechanism. And different mechanisms require different treatments. The idea that trauma is the root cause of most mental illness didn't appear out of nowhere. Gabor Mate has repeatedly said that trauma underlies most mental illness. Nicole LePera, the holistic psychologist, often frames nervous system dysregulation and behavioral patterns as consequences of unresolved trauma. And to be fair, for decades, psychiatry under-recognized trauma. It minimized it. So the pendulum needed to swing. Trauma deserved to be taken seriously. But when pendulums swing too far, we lose balance. And online, that message spreads quickly. ADHD, trauma. Addiction, trauma. Relationship dysfunction, trauma. It's a compelling framework. It's also broader than the data supports. So let's go through them. Claim number 1, trauma is the root cause of most mental illness. Trauma is a powerful risk factor, but risk factor is not the same as universal cause. ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia have strong genetic and neurodevelopmental underpinnings. They occur in individuals with no trauma history. Twin studies, family studies, and longitudinal data consistently show this. When we say most, we imply majority causation. That claim does not match the evidence. Some conditions are trauma-driven for sure, and some are biologically primarily. Many are multifactorial. Precision matters because treatment depends on the mechanism. Claim number 2. You'll often hear ADHD described online as a trauma response. Trauma can absolutely impair executive function. Chronic stress reduces working memory, impulse control, and attentional stability. But ADHD is neurodevelopmental. It typically presents in early childhood. It runs strongly in families. Neuroimaging shows consistent differences in frontal striatal networks. Stress can absolutely worsen ADHD. It does not create it de novo. When we blur that line, patients delay appropriate medication and targeted interventions. Now, claim number 3. Your nervous system is dysregulated because of unresolved trauma. Dysregulation is a description. It is not a diagnosis. Sleep deprivation dysregulates the nervous system. So does thyroid dysfunction. So does major depressive disorder. So does stimulant withdrawal. If every dysregulated state is labeled trauma-based, we stop evaluating alternative causes. And evaluation is the core of medicine. Lastly, claim number 4. Heal the trauma and the symptoms will resolve. When trauma is the driver, trauma-focused therapies do work. EMDR, cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure. I've seen patients improve dramatically when trauma is accurately identified. But I've also seen patients spend years in trauma therapy for untreated bipolar disorder, or untreated OCD, or primary ADHD. Healing harder doesn't fix the wrong diagnosis. Diagnostic clarity does. I want to be clear. Trauma is real. It shapes people. It reshapes biology. It can alter the course of a life. But if you've been trying to heal for years without progress, well, that doesn't mean you're failing. It might mean you're aiming at the wrong target. So, how do you actually tell the difference? If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Every symptom has to pass what I call the 3T test. Trauma, trait, or trigger. Same symptoms, 3 completely different drivers. And if you confuse them, well, you confuse the treatment. First up, trauma. Trauma is time-linked. Something happened. And after that moment, your nervous system changed. There's a before and an after. Trauma is cue reactive. Specific reminders make your symptoms spike. A sound, a smell, a situation. And trauma improves when the memory is processed and safety is restored. Not perfectly, but measurably. If your symptoms follow that pattern, that's trauma. Number 2 is trait. A trait is different. A trait is early, lifelong, often visible in childhood. You weren't fine until something happened. You're always wired this way. Traits are cross-situational. They show up everywhere. Places like school, with work, relationships. Traits run in families. ADHD, bipolar disorder, temperament patterns. When something has always been there, that's not trauma. That's wiring. And number 3, trigger. A trigger is contextual. Symptoms start during a stressor. A breakup, a job change, sleep deprivation, substance misuse. If you remove the stressor and your baseline returns, that's not trauma. And it's not a lifelong trait. It's your nervous system responding to the current conditions. Remember, trauma is time-linked, trait is lifelong, and a trigger is situational. If you don't know which category you're in, you can spend years treating the wrong thing. Inner child work won't fix untreated ADHD. Stimulants won't resolve unresolved trauma. And stress management won't stabilize bipolar disorder. Same symptoms, different mechanisms, different treatment. That's the 3T test. I'm going to show you what I mean. If you remember, I failed out of dental school. At the time, it felt traumatic. I carried that failure with me for years, through medical school, through residency, through fellowship. Before exams, before evaluations, before major milestones, I'd feel that same anxiety. And I told myself it was trauma. I thought I was afraid of failing again. But when I stepped back and ran the 3T test, the pattern wasn't time-linked. It was lifelong. I had some distractibility. I had inconsistent performance, hyperfocus under pressure, executive dysfunction. It wasn't trauma. It was actually untreated ADHD. And when I treated the ADHD, something surprising happened. The anxiety around failing disappeared. Not because I healed the memory, but because I addressed the mechanism. And that's the difference between trauma and a trait. Same story, different driver. Trauma is real. It reshapes biology. It alters perception. It can change the trajectory of our life. But it is not the root of everything. And the relief in that is this. When you stop treating everything as trauma, you can finally treat what's actually wrong. Here's something you can do starting today. The next time a symptom shows up, brain fog, anxiety, impulsivity, emotional reactivity, run the 3T test. Was there a before and after? Has this been lifelong? Or is this tied to something happening right now? Don't answer emotionally. Answer historically. Patterns don't lie. And that question alone will point you towards the right category. I've seen what happens when we get this right. People who've been stuck for years finally move forward. Not because they healed harder, but because they aimed at the right target. Precision isn't cold, it's compassionate. And the right diagnosis is one of the most validating things you can give someone. Now, earlier I mentioned yerba mate and addiction. If trauma isn't the root cause of addiction, then what is? Is it genetics, dopamine circuitry, early exposure, learned reinforcement patterns? That's exactly what we're breaking down next in this Psych 101 series, which is linked down below, because addiction is one of the most misunderstood conditions online. And if we get that wrong, we don't just delay treatment, we distort responsibility, biology, and recovery. So if you want to understand what actually drives addiction and why the trauma-only model falls short, subscribe because that's what's up next. And until next time, be safe and be well.